Hello my crafty friends and welcome back. So last video that I made, I had shared how I made these Gelli Prints. These are all just festive little banners that I was going to make, and I wanted to show you how I made the little banners. All of them measured 4.5 inches, but some of them were longer and some of them were shorter. So because they were 4.5 inches, I made a mark at 4.25 inches. And then I just went into my paper cutter and lined up the corner and the dot on the straight edge and just cut that off. Then I flipped it. Here I was just showing you this is basically going to be the other side of the triangle, and I just wanted to make sure that looked right, and it did. You could use this as a guide, but I already have my dot and that's going to do the exact same thing. So again, you line up one corner, the other corner, and the dot again, and then you just slice that down. And that gives you your triangle. So this is my shorter banner piece, and since I had some longer ones, the shorter one was 6 inches and the longer ones were 7 inches. So I decided to just alternate between the 6 and 7 inch banners, and that way I would have a small and a tall, a short and a tall little banner to go across. So each of these Gelli Prints are made on watercolor paper, 90-pound watercolor paper, and that makes it a little bit of a stronger paper to make these banners, so I didn't have to layer them on top of anything. They were strong just as is. So here I marked again at 2.25 inches, and I'm lining up my dot, and then on the other side I'm lining up the end, the corner piece, and then just doing the same thing. This is a longer one. This is my 7 inch. So the triangle on this one is going to be a little more steep than on the shorter one. I did keep my little excess pieces. I'll do a little something with those as well. So I have a long one and a short one. And then I'll just kind of quickly go through here and show you my process. I'm just cutting them all down to match. As I was doing this, I would look at my gel print, and the one side that was going to have more showing, I just made sure that that was the side that I wanted, that I liked the design on. So I would take my banner, hold it up to the gel print, and see which side I wanted to cut my short angle on and which side I wanted to be the big part. So I was taking that into consideration as I was cutting these down and as I was measuring them out. And this goes together actually really quickly, especially cutting down these little banner pieces. I cut out, I think, 7 banner pieces, and they alternated, and then that was enough for me to spell out the word happy, which is 5 letters, and then 4th went on one, and of July went on one. Now you could totally space those out differently. Initially I was thinking I would do the 5 letters in the middle with one banner on each side, kind of for decoration, and then maybe incorporate 4th of July somewhere on the happy banner. But I decided I liked it better this way. So whatever you think looks good, if you wanted to try your own kind of banner. Plus you don't have to just do patriotic. You could do this for summertime if you just wanted a summer banner. It can say happy summer or something fun, or it could be for the holidays if you like the getting ready for, I don't know if Christmas is too soon right now, but sometimes Halloween, fall, things like that. I usually start getting ready for those in about August time frame, so it's still a little bit too early for me, but these would be fun to recreate with some fall prints or some Halloween prints, I think, and maybe even Christmas ones. And once I had all of those cut out, I went on my Silhouette Cameo program, which is Silhouette Design Studio, and I just used a font that I had downloaded from DaFont. I believe this was a beachy type one, so I'll find the one that I used and I'll link it in my description. It was just a really fun font and I liked how it looked. The only one I changed up was the fourth. The 4 in this font looked kind of too bubbly. It didn't even look like a 4 to me, so I did use a different font for that one. But then I shrunk down the size of the "of July." That way those would both fit, those words would both fit on one banner. I made the happy and the 4 pretty decent sized. I wanted them to fill up the banner pretty nicely. The nice thing about cutting it out yourself is you can size it to whatever size and font that you like. So this was my layout that I kind of played around with, and I decided I liked my banner to look like this. One thing I thought it needed is the letters were a little bit flat, so I used a gray Copic marker and I just made a shadow along the right side of each letter and kind of like the bottom, so that matched on all my letters. I also did a little shading on this white star, and these were a little bit more difficult using the marker on these little tiny letters, but I was able to still get the shadow on there. The nice thing is this was a light gray, so even if I messed up just a little bit, it didn't really show, but it did give a little something to get it to pop off of the background. You could always use a darker gray or go in with a gray and then maybe a dark gray after a light gray and then a dark gray. Just a couple of different variations. I didn't want to use color like the red or the blue on these because I didn't want them to clash. It's hard to match colors, so the white was the best option for me in this case. And then I just used some foam tape on all of my little pieces. So these stars were the ones that I had jelly printed, and I picked out the ones that I liked the most. I was actually using these stars as my stencil. So if you watched the video, you saw where I put paint down on my gel plate, then I pressed these stars in and removed the paint around the stars. And so these have all this paint from just pulling those prints or the design for those prints. But I like the idea of using them and getting them to pop off of the background. So I thought that was a really fun little touch. And also it brought in, so some of my prints didn't have that many of the variation of colors. Like this one I felt needed a little bit of that darker color in there and then the bright blue. So I was able to bring that in using these stars. And it does help putting those stars behind the letters. Again, because it's white, it helps those letters pop off of the little banner pieces a little bit better. Next, I needed to make holes in my banner, so I have this crocodile, and it has a small hole on one side and a larger hole on the other. Then it has this little measure thing on the side, this little black measure. I used that to measure how far down I went, and I'll show a close-up of my next one, but I just eyeballed it. You could measure it and do a little dot and then just put the dot inside the hole and do it that way. But I decided it was just going to be a lot faster for me to just use that little black piece on my crocodile as my measure. So it comes out a little bit, and if I lined up one side of it with that little black piece, I knew it was going to be the same distance each time I pressed my little hole. So here I'm lining it up, press down, and then I'll know they're the same distance. So I just did that with all of my banners. It was easier with the flat side to the right. I'm right-handed, so I just flipped it backwards, and that made it easier to line that side up. So both sides I measured out basically the same way, just flipping it over. Once all my holes were done, I had to pick out some twine. I have this red and white twine, and then I have this blue with gold. I did like the blue one. It was a really pretty color, a really bright color. And it had the gold, but I ended up going with the red and white, mostly because it kind of reminded me of the stripes on a flag, the American flag. So I liked that about this red and white one, so I went with this one. To assemble the banner here, I went in through the front side on my first letter, and then I went in through the back and then back to the front on the second hole. Then I was just going to do the same thing for the next letter. Now as I was starting to thread these letters together, I was looking at a pile of my extra pieces, the parts that I had cut off of these gel prints, and I realized I could definitely use those and make little flags in between these little banner pieces. So I cut them down, and then to make it look like a flag or some kind of a little bannery flag thing, I cut up the middle just a little bit, and then from one corner to the center and then the other corner to the center, and that just gave a nice little finishing touch to the banner. And then I did a hole on the top of each of them. As I started threading these little ones, I realized I needed a second hole, or else it wasn't going to lay flat. It was gonna go sideways. So since I had already punched my hole in the center of all these little small banners, I went in with a hole very close to that one, and then that way I could thread through those two little holes. So for the bigger banners, I go in the front, through the back, and back through the front. And then for the smaller banners, I actually go in the back side over the front and into the back. So it's opposite for the little flags than it is for the big flags. And for all of this, I'm just eyeballing it. I didn't take out my measure or anything, and I think it turned out looking just fine. But if you do prefer to measure, if maybe things are really getting uneven, certainly putting a little pencil on the back before you punch it would help. So for the little one, I went in the back side. This way a little bit of the ribbon would be showing, or the twine, but I didn't want it all showing on the side of it. I just wanted that little bit showing in the middle. And for these larger ones, because there wasn't much on the edges, I went in the opposite way, so the twine was not going to show as much in the front, just a little bit on the sides. And the reason I wanted to make sure I had enough twine on the back of my banner pieces, and you'll see that in a little bit, is I'm going to use tape to make sure they don't slide around or become uneven. And if the twine was on the front side of it, it would be a lot harder to try to secure that. So let me know in the comments, what do you guys like to make for the summertime crafting? To me, it's kind of an off season. Obviously fall, Halloween, Christmas, those have their, even in the spring we have, you know, Easter and just springtime flowers and blooms. Summertime, I think, is probably, I craft for the summer the least, but I like crafting in the summer, if that makes any sense. But do you tend to stick to like beachy, summery things, or do you start just getting a head start on the holidays during this time? Because like for me, it's other than 4th of July, it's not a very festive time, because you know, you're mostly outside all summer long, whereas during the cooler months you're inside a lot. So I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you craft more during the summer, or do you tend to put that off, or do some holiday crafting even though it's summertime? I'd just be curious. So here I'm just making sure I have enough twine before I close it up completely, and once I'm happy with the spacing, I just use regular Scotch tape on this. You could use washi tape, but I was putting tape right behind the holes, so I used the clear just because I didn't want to see the tape through those holes. But you can use whatever you like. This little flamingo tape dispenser is from Dollar Tree, if you've seen those before. It actually works pretty well. Sometimes things from Dollar Tree don't work that great, but I haven't had any issues with this little dispenser, and it's really cute for the summer. Speaking of summer things at Dollar Tree, another thing that I definitely recommend if you have a pool or you go swimming, they have these little floating hammocks. It's just you blow up like 2 sides, that's like an inner tube, and then the center of it is connected with like this little hammock. They sell those on Amazon, much more expensive. It's of course made of better material, but I think they're great. They work just fine, and they're nice because you can be almost like in the water a lot more, and you're not like sitting on top of the water, but I think they work great. Definitely recommend those. Okay, so while I'm putting this together, I'll just share a little summertime story. So I do like going to the springs. I'm in Florida, so they have springs in a lot of places. And one year my brother came to visit, and we told him we were going to take him to the springs, and I got this blow-up boat, and it had oars with it. The spring water is very, very cold, so even in the summertime, it's a shock to your body because it's so hot outside and it's so cold in the water. It's almost uncomfortable to get in, so I knew I wanted to have some kind of a boat. But I like going to springs in the summertime because it actually is refreshing when you get really, really hot. Then you can dip into the water or just jump in and cool off really, really quickly. So I took my brother to this spring that had like a long float time to it. And as we got to the springs, it started raining and was completely cloud covered. And we're talking July in Florida. And it was actually really cold. So the water was cold. So we couldn't go into the water because it was freezing. And then we were cold because it was raining on us and the wind was blowing. And my brother is sitting over here freezing. And he's like, I just never even knew Florida could get cold in the summer. And he's like, and I'm freezing. So it was just a funny story because we always joke that it's so boiling hot in Florida. But if the weather's just right, besides hurricanes, you can definitely find some cool days when the rain starts coming along. So whenever we get our consistent rain in Florida and it's a nice, even, steady rain, it's definitely a good thing. All right, so here's what I had so far of my banner. I hung it up on my mantle. I just wanted to see what it looked like and to see if it had the right spacing and if it would fit. And I liked how it was laying, but I was looking at the words and they needed a little bit of something. I like sparkle, but I didn't want to pull out my glitter. That's really messy. So I have this little pen. It's called Just Glitter by Marvy, and basically shake it up like a paint pen and it lets out just a very light amount of glitter. It's just more like a shimmer, like those shimmer mists or whatever. So I used that on my letters just to give it a little bit of shine, because where I have them hanging up over my mantle, I have two lights that shine on my mantle and they'll pick up any kind of glitter that's going to show on these. It's really hard to capture the glitter on camera. I was trying to show you, but I don't think you can really tell that it has a shine to it, but it does, and it definitely makes them pop out a little bit more than they were without the shine. Now I guess if I wanted a really good shine to these, then I would probably use Stickles. Stickles is a glitter glue that has really good shine to it. I just didn't have that much left of my Stickles to go over all of these words, and I didn't want to use it up, so that's why I used this pen instead. And I didn't want the messy glitter that was gonna flake off, so this was the option I went with. Like, you could also, if you planned this ahead of time, you could Gelli print some metallics or just paint metallics on top of these. Like, there's even those dragonfly glazes would look really cool. Yeah, but I just ended up going with the pen, that sparkle pen, because I remembered that I had it, so might as well use what I have. But yeah, so that is my banner now that I have my sparkle on there. That's my fourth, and I have that little star with some gray shading on it, and you can see how they pop off of the banner because of the foam tape. I just love how this turned out. I had a lot of fun making these prints, and then I always struggle with making something with my prints, so I was really proud of myself that I actually made something and completed a project with the Gelli Prints and with the intention of doing something with them. So thanks for watching and sticking with me to the end if you're here still. So I will catch you in the next video. Happy crafting!